welcome to a new episode of the brand called You. Today we have a professional manager turned entrepreneur, Raymond Andrews. Raymond, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Raymond is an MBA from Symbiosis Pune. He has worked with Oneida Airtel Insurance. He, along with his wife, started a company called Soul Foods, which he proudly says did not work. And then he co-founded Biryani Blues with his wife again, which is now 37 outlets and expanding.
Yes.
Raymond, that's been quite an amazing journey, and you're very young. Before we get into your entrepreneurial journey, tell us a little bit about your professional journey, your learnings, and some of your challenges.
Well, I finished college in 2000 from Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies, Pune. And the first job I got was, of course, campus placement with the popular brand then called Oneida, consumer durable company. So very glad that I got a job. And after the management trainee stint of about 3 months in Bombay, I took a posting back in Hyderabad, my hometown. Well, I was very surprised that you would get paid so much to do touring in the rest of Andhra Pradesh and just meet people and do collection. The job was very, in some sense, easy. And I was very surprised that from earning nothing from college, I suddenly started having cash in the bank and cash in the hand. And I wondered why people paid people so much, because earlier I would do a lot of things and not get any money at correct. So it was a good learning. And then the industry was not doing too well then, because the big MNC Korean companies had entered, and Indian brands like BPL, Oneida were struggling in some sense, and LG and Samsung were really taking the market share. There was a sunrise industry then, so I stayed with Oneida for a year, and one of my colleagues from Oneida who had moved to Airtel, the booming telecom industry, he referred me into marketing, into a product management role. And from a sales and collection sort of a role, I was very glad, because whatever you learned from Philip Kotler in marketing, you got to implement that in a Airtel sort of an environment. So I grabbed that opportunity, joined the marketing team there. I spent 2 years there, and I learned a lot, because that industry was very dynamic. There was the industry where it was at some 16 rupees incoming rates per minute, and in my 2 years it moved to almost about 1 rupee incoming rates, right? So price drops happened, media campaigns happened. Hutchison and Reliance both launched in those 2 years, so it was very, very interesting to see what all could be done. The marketing budgets were phenomenal then. We were in the AP circle. I had the opportunity of meeting Mr. Sunil Bharti Mittal over a beer. We have 10 people with the marketing team, which I still cherish. And it was a great learning experience.
And from there, you moved to insurance.
From there, I got poached into insurance.
Okay.
I didn't know what I was getting into, right? But the salary and the compensation structure and the whole thing was very entrepreneurial, right? So from a very appraisal-based growth career that you could get in most industries, insurance had, at least the insurance sales piece, the agency model that was there was straight out of New York Life. So they taught people how to be entrepreneurs, and they gave you unlimited income in some sense as a override on what your agency team earned. So that was a very interesting thing. And of course, at that age, getting financial independence was very critical. Being able to pay off your car loan and your home loan made a lot of sense. And on a fixed salary, it was very difficult. And most staffing roles like marketing and product and ops, you only had a fixed component and then a bonus at the end of the year. So there was no, if you were a better performer, you would probably get 1 or 2% more, but it didn't swing that much as in a sales role. That was something they convinced me. We had multiple meetings. So I'd say that they're very great storytellers, the insurance HR teams. And they were able to pull me off from a nice marketing role into a sales role. So when I moved there, I realized the reality of sales and how tough it is and how much time you have to spend in the sun and roam around and do. But I spent the next 2 years learning the ropes, overachieving most targets, getting recognized in the national forum among the top 8 sales managers out of 700. So all of that helped me get confidence in that. If you are focused on something, you will be able to achieve it. After that, Aparna got, my wife Aparna was with GE Money then, got a promotion and a career opportunity in Bombay. So I applied internally in an internal job posting, and I too moved to Bombay with her. And I moved into a different function called bank assurance, where we were supposed to sell through the bank partners. From there, I spent, I think, the next 6 years managing large bank accounts, small bank accounts for Max Life Insurance. And then, as the career kept progressing and we kept growing, we moved into our head office, which was in Gurgaon. Even her head office was in
And
Gurgaon.
at which stage did Aparna decide to start Soul Foods?
So that was in 2012,
Okay.
when
Which
I
was
think-
about 12 years after you started working.
yeah, 12 years after I started working. So the reason why we took some time, or at least we tell ourselves this, is that one is we did not have any reference within the family of anyone being an entrepreneur. So both our parents are from the armed forces,
Okay.
and most people were either in a teaching job or in a bank in the family, right?
Mhm.
So that was a generation which looked at careers as vocations and not just as careers, right? So we spent the first, I'd say, 12 years of our careers trying to figure out what we wanted to do. We were sure we wanted to do something, become entrepreneurs. Um, I think very early on in our lives, we read the book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which inspired both of us. We wanted to be different and do something that left a legacy of some sorts. And in 2012, we got the guts, and we were sufficiently financially stable. I wouldn't say we were
Correct.
independent,
Yeah.
but we didn't have too much of liability on ourselves. And that's when Aparna decided to quit her job, start Soul Food. We had a lovely business plan of catering healthy food to children and also doing healthy meals to corporates through catering. But what turned out on the business plan and what actually happened in reality was very different. So on a business plan, you were able to make your whole model well thought through when you look at all the costs that can be, but you're not really thinking of that in a B2B segment. There's a lot of negotiation that happens, and even if the partner in front is very large and you expect a certain margin, it all gets negotiated down to wafer thin margins. And then you are usually not buffering in your business plan for unseen expenses, like it can be anything like from things like increase inflation in costs to pilferages to compliance that you would want to do, right? So, and the margin being so thin, we realized that this model was just not working. So about a year and a half into the model, we decided to pull the plug on it, which I think was a very sensible thing, because we knew that one learning that I share with a lot of entrepreneurs who come to us for advice and speak to us is that while you can be passionate about your calling and what you believe is the problem statement you're trying to solve, you should never fall in love with it.
Correct.
Because when you will never realize when you've dug yourself into a hole which you can't come out of.
Absolutely.
And I think somewhere there we were able to identify this that early, that this is something that we want to do, we'd love to do, but the ecosystem does not permit. So we decided to exit. We took a year to actually spend regrouping our forces in that sense. And since we had burnt a lot of all our savings in the first project itself, we needed fresh capital to bootstrap. So we asked some friends, we put in some of our own money, invested whatever we had, sold some of our investments and put it in, and started Biryani Blues in 2013. March 2013 was the first store we started. It was a very small...
So why did you decide to select biryani? I mean,
well,
such a niche category, and why
that's-
not North Indian food or South Indian food or Mughlai cuisine? I mean, I don't know.
See, one is the primary reason is that every time we went to our hometown, which was Hyderabad, both of us are from Hyderabad, we would be flying back. I think, like many people who have traveled to Hyderabad, the Paradise or the
From the airport,
Bawarchi,
yes. I have done
the
that
packs,
also.
right? Flying them back home and then freezing them and eating them over the next few days, right? So we saw that as an opportunity. One. Second is we wanted to make it, whatever we did in this space, we wanted to make it large. We wanted to make it something that will leave a mark behind. And we wanted to be in that terms, I don't know, the Domino's of whatever we do, right? So Domino's was a very inspirational brand. Haldiram's was a very inspirational brand for us. So we said we don't want to do a 2-store, 3-store kind of a business which gets us enough to run the house, right? So we wanted to create a large brand that would be probably India's first QSR that will go global. So that was the thought. We are still on that journey. We are far from building what we wanted to build. But that being the thought, this product is very scalable, right? So it's the right mix of protein and carbs. It's easy to eat, both in a corporate environment, like in a boardroom, it can be served in a single tray. While it can also be a very exotic and premium dish that's served in Diwali functions or large gatherings at the home, right? You place it in a handi and set it up, and somewhere biryani has that whole exotic and comfort food rich feel to it that is celebratory in nature. So we thought that this is the product that can also hit a daily, a weekly at least, if not daily, where people can have it at least once a week. Plus, it can also be perceived as a very celebratory thing. So it hit all the parts of the pyramid that everybody would want to target, right? So that was why we chose biryani. And
so what is the origin of biryani? I mean, there's a lot of debate I was reading before you came. Some people say it's Indian, and some people say it came from outside to India.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on this?
So I also read on the net only because I can tell you a lot about insurance, but on biryani, I think what we personally think is that the Mughals brought a certain form of the biryani, but it got perfected in India because Indians love their food and they've been able to actually fine tune it to the local needs. And today, I think in India also there are a lot of biryanis. There is the Lucknowi, there is the Calcutta, there is the Mangalorean, there is the Hyderabadi, right? But of them all, I think the Hyderabadi biryani has the most popularity and has become most famous. So even if you go to a North Indian restaurant, say in Delhi, and you open a menu which has 300 items, there will be a Hyderabadi dum biryani mentioned there. And that, I think, is gives us conviction that if you're able to give a great product that becomes an organized national chain or international chain, right, there is a very big market, because in every restaurant there is a biryani listed. They might be making a pulao or a shortcut method or doing whatever they do, but there is a need that a customer wants when he walks into a restaurant and he wants to see that biryani. That's why it's listed there. Now, since we started, a lot of biryani chains have opened. We were probably the first of the block in NCR who has really been able to build this biryani category. And a lot more people coming, but we are growing at a very, very healthy rate, and I'm sure they are also growing. The market itself is very large for the organized biryani space.
So, talking about biryani, I mean, there is Hyderabad biryani, there is Gujarat biryani, there is, biryani is being made by different people in different homes. Is there any difference in the way Hyderabad biryani is made, or is just branding?
No, I think it's completely different, right? Each of these biryanis are made very differently. The Hyderabadi biryani, in that sense, is a little more difficult, in the sense the preparation process is much longer and requires some bit of skill. What they follow in Hyderabad is called a kachi gosht biryani. So what they do is all the main ingredient, which is either the meat or the chicken or the vegetables, right? So that is in a raw form before you seal the handi, which in most other cuisines where it is a Pocky gosht or if it's a pulao in some sense, right? They're all cooked together.
I see.
So, but in this, you have to be very delicate that you don't burn the meat at the bottom of the vessel. So you have a marinated meat that's put in a thick bottom handi, and then you have layering of rice cooked at various levels. So I think that's somewhere in that sense you need to have some skill, right? So it's layered at various levels of cooking. Then you seal the handi, and then you cook it from the bottom. So the high heat at the bottom at high flame makes the marinade boil, and then the flavor goes up into the rice, cooking each level of rice. So the topmost layer is already about 80-90% done. Doesn't require so much cooking, but that's how the flavor comes up. And that's a very skillful and I think delightful process of this old method of cooking. And I think that's what's made it famous, because the flavors that you get from the dum which comes out, or the bhap that comes out from the raw meat, is very different from if you cooked it together. So that's a speciality that cuts
Someone who's been in Oneida and then in telecom and insurance, I'm very impressed at your knowledge of.
This has all been acquired over the last few years.
Excellent. So you said that kacha biryani is where raw meat is put, right?
Yes.
And pakka biryani is where
the meat is pre-cooked.
Pre-cooked and then put.
Pre-cooked and then cooked. That's also layered. So I think in the biryani there is the fundamental thing is layering. So in the Pocky Biryani there is a base of rice, and then there is a layering of cooked meat with some fried onions. Then you again layer the rice and do some garnishing, and then you again dum it for some time. But that's the easier method, because when you're cooking meat separately, you can't undercook or overcook it. But in Kachi Gosht Biryani, once you open the handi, you can't redo anything. Right?
So do you get all your chefs from Hyderabad, or you training people here?
So initially we used to. Now we've created a learning and development team. One, and second is we've simplified the process quite a bit. So in the whole probably biryani industry in India, I think we are probably the most ahead in terms of solving the whole process, the SOP of making a biryani. And we made it so simple that a person with reasonable skill, okay, he does not need to be a chef or IHM graduate or something like that, right? A reasonable skill and probably a little bit of knowledge of how cooking works will be able to make the biryani. So we've solved the back end quite a bit, because the objective was to not be in 100 stores, but to be in 1,000 stores. So then you can't have 1,000 chefs. It's going to be a very difficult process. And then people management is getting more and more costlier now, and it's going to be more difficult. Training them across so many locations is going to be difficult. So we've moved a lot on technology also. So we've been able to actually make some of the processes automated. So that's making, well, the product remains the same. So I think we've done a lot of research in the last 5 years, because our whole thought process has always been scale, to be able to give a good product across India. While there are local heroes in every region, it's also because there is no national organized alternative.
So
right?
that leads me to the next question, which is I was going to ask you: is there research happening, and are we reaching a stage with biryani where there'll be this plastic container, you lift the lid, put hot water, and it's ready to eat biryani? Or the same
that
quality?
I think is already there in the Indigo flights,
okay.
but
not
that's not yeah. So packaged food versus freshly cooked food is very different, and also people are willing today to pay for quality and the whole experience of getting the aroma when they open a box, right? So there is a definitely a segment of that who's on the go, right? Which is more who wants to eat out of a 7-Eleven kind of a store, right? He doesn't have time. He's reaching home late. He takes something home and opens it, heats and eats it, right? Which has a shelf life. We are in the freshly cooked segment, so that I think has always been our motto, that we will give a value for money product. We will give it to the customer fresh, that will be tasty, and we'll deliver it to him on time and give him an overall very good experience. So in that, this piece doesn't fit for us so much, but there is definitely a segment for that. But then that's priced also accordingly. So packaged products, while you're building your brand on a quick service restaurant, right? While you can solve all the back end pieces, the end product needs to be cooked. So even if you see a KFC or a McDonald's, right? So the frying of the French fries or the patty is happening right there, right? So that I think will always be our go-to model.
Right.
But evolution has definitely happened. This putting water and eating a biryani is already there.
It's already there. Okay.
But we are not going to be in that space.
I understand. So, one of the things that I've, whenever I speak to someone who's a food entrepreneur like you, one of the big challenges most food entrepreneurs face is what I call menu fatigue.
Okay.
A customer, given the wide variety of foods available, wants to keep experimenting with different kinds of foods.
Right.
So, how do you handle the fact that, the same customer may not keep coming back? You mentioned earlier in our talk once a week, but do customers want to keep coming back and eating biryani that frequently, or is it just the sheer size of the market that is driving your business?
No, our repeat rates are pretty high.
Okay.
So I'll come to that. But having said that, we do our product introductions probably once every quarter. But having said that, still our chicken biryani, which is the product we started the business with, and our veg biryani together take 80% of the business. See, all the other 25 products that are on the menu are the other 20%, right? So I think there is a lot to learn from the fried chicken of KFC or the Mac chicken from McDonald's, which has been there for 40 years or 50 years.
Or the butter chicken and roti.
Yeah, the butter chicken and roti, right? So those products are the favorite. So consumer walks in, he might see the whole menu 5 times and then he'll order a chicken biryani, right? So that I think is not going anywhere. But there is the millennial population which wants to experiment, for which we launch at least one product, and then there is seasonal products that we launch for, like in the Eid time, the 40-day or the 35-day before the Eid, we launch Halim, which is very popular back in Hyderabad. So that started picking up a lot. Then we have started a very unique, spicier chicken 65 biryani variant, which basically has a lot of color and is spicy and boneless, and so that also is getting a lot of uptake.
Okay.
So we keep launching a product, and when we launch products, we spend a lot of time, energy, and money marketing it, so people come to know. While we are at 37 locations, uh, we do a lot of outdoor, and we do a lot of digital marketing to promote this product. So it's not just hidden on a tent card in a dining service area, right?
So one more question before I move to the next segment. What's it like to have a spouse as a co-promoter? Do you take the office to the house and house to the office?
I think it's mostly taking the office to the house, right? The house is being managed by grandparents and the whole support system of people that are there. But I think most of the time we're discussing work at home too, because we are in a startup phase still, and there is a lot of focus, dedication, and unwavering attention that is required to this business. So we have now about 500 people working with us. We have the responsibility of making their careers grow too. So I think most of the time we're taking work home, and I think since the F&B business runs till 11, 12 at night, you're always having to be on your toes even if you're at home. Having said that, other than that, it's great working with your spouse, because you are on the after spending so many years with each other, you're on the same wavelength on many things, right? You can complete each other's sentences, right? So the thoughts and the direction are all very similar. You can drop the ball for some time because you have a partner who also understands and has the same vision, right? So if I have to be pulled out for some personal reasons, be it my parents' health or any other thing, right, she's able to manage the ship. The same way, if she needs to step out, I'll be able to manage the ship, right? We also have complementary skills to each other, right? So that works very well for us.
So moving into your journey as a startup entrepreneur, this is your second venture. What are some of the basic mistakes that a lot of startup entrepreneurs make?
Some of the mistakes that I see, there are tons of mistakes you can make. Absolutely. But I think one of the things that we've learned, and I think we still haven't learned properly, is that not planning enough for your cash flows, right? So, or cutting corners too much because you don't want to raise too much funds, or it can be that you're not spending enough time working on the finances while you're working too much on your product and your marketing and your back end. Right? That's something probably that a lot of startup entrepreneurs take for granted, right? So I'll get the money when I need it. Right now I don't need it, right? So that's when you run into a vicious circle, and sometimes you have to shift your entire focus from paying the next month's salary and keeping the business alive or paying your vendors than actually focusing on, and often all problems come at the same time. So you're out of money and competition has launched something else, and then there's a government ruling, right? So that all can just take you off. So if you're not sufficiently padded with at least a 6 months view, you should be worried. I think that's a big thing that most entrepreneurs do. Second is, I think that they focus is on what they believe, right, should continue. I've seen a lot of younger entrepreneurs who started great startups, but because an investor told them otherwise, or because the feedback that they got was different, they changed their model, right? And they went into something different, completely different from what they initially saw as a pain area that they could solve. I think if your focus shifts too easily because 5 people told you that it's not working, that also is very risky, because you'll be doing something for someone else is saying, so the passion automatically diminishes, right? So those are some things. Other than that, like I said earlier, that don't fall in love with the project, you know when to pull the plug, right? So these are some things that probably have kept us sorted. Safe.
So the next question is, you've already scaled up to 37 outlets, and you mentioned you're looking at thousands of outlets, and good luck to you. I hope to see you all over the world. But at what stage should an entrepreneur start to think of scaling up?
So it all depends on how much, what do you say, what's the entrepreneur's vision himself, right? What does he want to make? For us, it's very large. Some people might want to take it to a certain scale, right? And then not have too much hassle. Depends on his own thought process. But I think the time to scale up will be only when you've been able to prove the unit economics of one model, at least, that it's working, right? So today you can get swayed by a lot that's happening in the whole food tech space and fintech space, right? Where people are thinking the model will work later. Let's first put so much scale that the ecosystem changes, right? And people start only seeing you. Right? So for that kind of model works when you have a lot of financial backing and a lot of MNC funding that you can keep pushing in your own vision. But if you're not and you have limited funds, then you have to ensure that the model is not burning too much cash. You're able to actually make it work in one at least unit economics. So when we opened our first store, we got a lot of confidence that like we set a target in our business plan of 4.5 lakh sale for the first month, and we did 7.5 in the first month. But the margin was the same, which we would have made on the Excel sheet on 4.5, right? So we had to do some tweaks and do some learnings and everything. And from then, thankfully, we've been able to grow the business mostly on word of mouth and building a great product and service. But having said that, if you have to decide to scale large, you should be having a look at that financial cash flow management thing, right? Because the more you open and if you are making loss, the more you burn. And that's a big challenge.
Correct. And burn is always difficult.
Burn is always difficult.
So a few questions on you, for you personally. Are there any people who have had an influence on you and who have mentored you?
So the one person who's been a long time, mentor and so was my supervisor in Max Life. His name was Vishy. I used to call him fondly. I learned from him how to manage time because he would manage everything from doing his morning tennis to coming to work early to managing 20 things at the workplace, not missing anything, reviewing us on everything that he gave us on the right day and the right time. It was amazing. So I had the good opportunity to work with him. Learned a lot of things from him on how to inspect what you expect, and if you want something to happen, then you just can't hope it happens. You have to make things happen to make that happen, right? So that's something that he taught us. He's definitely one person who's taught me a lot, and I worked with him for a very long time, so almost 10 years, right? So I had a big rub off on what I do, and I had the opportunity of working with a lot of good supervisors, both in Airtel and Max Life, right? So it was wonderful learnings that I carry back with me into this job. So and other than that, I think my wife Aparna has been a good sounding board, and she's been very balanced in what we have to do and very clear of where we want to take this company. So I think these are a couple of people who really.
So my next question is a question I ask all my guests, because thousands and thousands of people listen to our podcasts, and they just assume successful individuals have had no failures. The question I have for you is, what is your biggest learning from your biggest failure?
So I don't have any regrets in terms of a failure. I think the learning when we shut that catering thing, it had wiped out all our funds. So I think that was something that gave us a lot of learning. I won't say that it was a failure. It gave us learning that you have to be prepared for the unexpected, right? While you work in companies, you have a padding that the funds that are being invested and managed for every project you did, right? Be it in all the large companies I worked, is someone else's, right? So you take calls, you make business calls, some work, some don't work. You run schemes, you run campaigns, right? Some work, some don't. So, but the impact financially is not on you, right? When you run your own business, every mistake you make has a financial impact, and that financial impact, the buck stops at you, right? Nobody else in the company, right? So I think we've been able to take learnings from that and make conscious calls of how much risk and what is okay and what is not okay. I think those learnings are something that I've carried back from the first failure that we did with Soul Foods, and from that, since then, I think Biryani Blues has been able to manage sufficiently well in building a business that is today of this size. Today we cater to almost 150,000 customers a month in NCR. So I think we need to manage that piece and also grow.
Fantastic. So my last question to you, you have spoken a lot about startups, and several people come to you to seek advice and want you to mentor them. What would your advice be to young individuals who are wanting to start up their business enterprise?
So something that I tell everyone is it's not how bad, it's not how good you are at what you're going to do. It's how badly you want it. So if you really want it, then it will happen, right? So you have to be passionate about what you're doing, and there has to be a real need, right? So if you actually see that there's a market for the need that you have, that you're trying to solve, the problem you're trying to solve, and if you really want to do something, it will happen. And I've seen that happen with me. I've seen that happen with others. I've seen dwarfs turn into giants in Max Life Insurance, right? Because they decided one day that, okay, I'm going to do a certain goal, a target which was unachievable before, or set new records, right? The same thing for an entrepreneur, right? So if he's completely passionate about doing something, it will happen. And I think that passion should not die, and that passion will not die if you are planning on the other smaller things, like I told about having a business plan, being focused, keeping your cash flows in place, right? Then that passion will not die. But if you're bogged down with vendors down your neck and not having enough funds, or having a compliance issue that's at hand, then that focus disappears, right? So I think they should just keep the focus and plan well.
Wonderful. Raymond, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our show. I'm sure everyone who will listen to you will appreciate everything you've said. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.